Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yannick Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On today's episode, our guest is Tim Attinger. Tim is co-founder and president of OvationCXM. With nearly 30 years of executive management experience in financial services, financial technology, and digital transformation. Prior to co-founding OvationCXM, Tim held executive roles in digital transformation and growth with successful exits at Monitise, a global money platform acquired by Fiserv and Blackhawk Network, which went public in 2013. Before this, Tim had an extensive career with Visa. He managed a $1 billion plus global portfolio of digital businesses, led product innovation development, and was part of the executive team that took Visa Inc. public in 2008. Preceding roles including building and managing strategic growth initiatives for First Data, now Fiserv, and managing client engagements for a host of Fortune 100 companies with Windermere, a McKinsey-spinoff boutique strategy consultancy. So without further delay, sit back, plug your earphones in, and let's jump right into this conversation with Tim. Welcome, Tim.
Hi, Yannick. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. So we always like to ask our guests if you could share in your own words, even though we did read your formal bio in terms of your background, a little bit, of your journey, how you got to where you are today, in your own words, and why you do what you do.
Sure. Well, and the funny thing about it is it wasn't as though, what you just read off was something I set out to do consciously from the outset. It was, a bit of opportunistic, starting in a consultancy, then basically offered a role with a former client to help drive strategy, and then recruited from there by some friends to go to yet another company. I've spent most of my time in a particular industry in a particular kind of role, but it almost feels as though that was, a happenstance rather than, sort of a conscious thing that I was driving, which I guess means, in retrospect, my career is a fascinating thing for me to see because it's, been highly varied and at the same time, not necessarily overtly managed, if that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing. We're in a very unique environment globally as it relates to customer experience. And so I'd like for you to share with us a little bit about why it's so important that organizations should have customer experience as a priority for their business. I know most of your experience is in the financial sector, so it would be good to hear from your perspective, especially seeing that space is a competitive space. What can businesses do to differentiate themselves and set themselves apart?
Yeah, well, and I think part of the challenge that enterprises find themselves in today, and particularly with respect to sort of customer experience and how that intersects with digital transformation, is that a lot of organizations are looking at customer experience as a way to optimize sort of touch points or channels of communication with customers, as opposed to sort of the way that we look at it, which is thinking about holistically the customer's journey with an enterprise or the customer's journey with a business, which is, more than just an interaction, but it's a series of engagements as the customer tries to accomplish something in their lives, right, or in their own business. And so I think, part of the challenge that businesses have seen to date is that they're thinking about touch points as opposed to customer journeys, which creates a challenge in how you solve for delivering great customer experience. And I think, the reason why customer experience is increasingly important is, it's a fairly simple thing, but it bears repeating with most enterprises, that all of your revenue as an enterprise comes from paying customers, right? So, the most important source of growth for your business is your customer base. Frankly, the lowest cost position you can possibly have in any marketplace is to have a satisfied customer base that continues to do business with you. So I think customer experience is increasingly important in the marketplace because um, recruiting and then retaining and growing a customer relationship is increasingly challenging in competitive spaces. And, those organizations that focus on doing it right, and particularly in orchestrating great customer journeys, which we can talk about in a little more detail, but, sort of orchestrating great customer journeys, uh, will have a competitive advantage relative to organizations that are looking at, sort of either optimizing touch points or trying to re-architect their entire, sort of back end business from a technology standpoint, as opposed to focusing from the customer back into their business.
Brilliant. So you spoke about customer journey, which I do want to talk about. But before we get onto the customer journey, what I wanted to find out also, especially seeing that the space is competitive and there's a lot of digital or digitization that's happening across different industries, especially in the financial sector for sure. And so, as a result of the digitization and also artificial intelligence, people are losing their jobs. Like, I mean, over the weekend, I'm here in Kingston, Jamaica, and over the weekend, I read an article in our local newspaper stating that 100 persons in the BPO sector are going to be laid off. And I imagine that it is as a result of increased artificial intelligence and less, they're increasing efficiency, but they're also reducing the level of human input that they're utilizing. What are your views on that?
And I think, and it's unfortunate to hear that news, right? Because I think, the best kind of deployment for artificial intelligence, for machine learning, for automation is not as a replacement for people, but as a complement to them. So a large part of sort of the platform capabilities, and again, just taking from context and sort of my company OvationCXM and how we think about it, but a large part of the deployment capability that we put in place is essentially helping people be better at the live interaction and the live engagement and the direct engagement with a customer. And I think about sort of the analogy of the airline industry. When you think about sort of the check-in process, if you've got a fairly straightforward, I just need my boarding pass, I don't have any bags to check, and I'm on my way to the gate, right? That's something that absolutely, because it's always the same, it's never complicated. That automating that stuff is great, because what it does is it frees up the humans who are there to deal with the family of five who just had their flight canceled. They've got a connection, the luggage is already on the way, right? So I think when you look at sort of AI and digitization, a lot of the initial investment has been in exactly what you're describing, sort of these point solutions where I'm just going to try to automate conversations and digitize a particular channel, but I'm not looking at what is the overall customer experience of trying to navigate my entire enterprise. And, who are the people who are going to help me do that, right? The Sherpas who help me, sort of climb this hill that is getting myself, live with a product or opening a business and having a financial institution help me do that. So, I think over the long term, the pendulum will swing back to equilibrium, and organizations will realize that, you know, conversational automation is great for certain things, but having intelligence inside of systems to help deliver the right answers to the right people in the right moment in the context of what the customer is trying to accomplish, and then having humans engage with that customer is really, I think, where the industry is going to go.
All right. So let's go back to the customer journey. So the journey of the customer. For our listeners that, I mean, I've had episodes in the past where we have guests that talk about customer journey, but because I want to get a little bit more granular, let's talk about the customer journey. Let's say, for example, in a financial institution, if you were, let's say,
Hmm.
getting a product like a credit card, for example, when you look
Hmm.
at the journey that the customer would take from application until, however long they use that card for, what are some of the key things that we need to think about in the journey? And is the journey just giving the customer the card because now we have new business, now we have a new loan that we've booked? Or is it more so the maintenance of having that person on board? Like in Jamaica, for example, one of my greatest pet peeves is if you pay really well on your credit card, you automatically get an increase annually. I think a telephone call should be
Hmm.
given to the customer to find out, we see that you're a great customer in terms of payments, and we'd like to offer
Hmm.
you an additional increase. Is this something you'd be open to versus just, getting your statement and seeing that you've been given an additional X thousand of dollars on the card. But what are your views on that?
Hmm. Right. So I think, well, and to back it up into sort of where my firm spends most of our time, which is in sort of business relationships. So banks, to take the analogy you just had, imagine a bank helping a business owner who's opening a new business apply for a line of credit so that they can fund, you know, equipment and site improvements and setting up a payroll service so that they can, sort of disperse funds to employees. Um, and if you think about sort of journeys in three basic increments, there's sort of the discovery and buying journey where I figure out what it is I need and who has it and from whom I'd like to buy it. And then once you finally committed to buying it from someone, what is one of the most challenging things we've seen in financial services is getting a customer from, hey, I'd like this solution from you, Mr. Bank, all the way through to it's working for me today and I'm finally live with it. And in business banking, that process can be uh fairly complicated, right? With multiple steps. And you imagine what it's like as a business owner, small business owner applying for a lending relationship. You've got paperwork you fill out, there are forms you have to send in, there are credit checks that the bank does, there's an entire internal process of reviewing your risk and underwriting requirements that you don't even have any visibility into. And
Mm-hmm.
then somewhere out the other end of it, right, you find out whether or not you qualify, right? So um, and then on the tail end of the sort of, what we call the go live journey, there's also the ongoing relationship, right? Which is quite frankly where most of the experience of a financial institution comes from, which is what's it like every single day for me to use this and solve problems. And I think, what are some of the most important things in, sort of thinking about, let's just take that go live journey as an example. Yeah, most businesses are blind to what's happening, right? It's sort of like I bought something from you and then it kind of disappears into a black hole. I don't hear from you for 3 or 4 weeks, except every couple of maybe twice you ask me for things completely out of the blue. I have no idea why. And then right, and then another couple of weeks go by and I get some kind of decision. It's sort of like one of the most opaque things that you can possibly imagine, as opposed to you think about the experience of that business owner as a consumer, when they take advantage of something like a food delivery product, or I mean, God forbid, they just buy something from an online merchant like an Amazon. There are, really clear steps that are communicated to you. Here's where you are, here's where you're going, here's how many steps there are from here to there. And, at step 4, we're going to ask you for something, right? It's as simple as saying, make it really clear to the customer what are the sort of the stops along the way on the journey that you're about to undertake with them, make them aware of where they are. And even internally in organizations that are trying to deliver to that customer, you quite often have departments that don't talk to each other, right? So it's everybody internally is kind of like, who's got the ball, who's got next, what am I supposed to be doing now, when does this get done? And so I think a large part of making experiences go well is just connecting all of those humans and systems and teams into a fabric that makes everybody aware of what everyone else is doing. Where are we, in this process, and communicating that in simple terms to the customer so they know where they are. When you think about it, a large part of customer experience is just visibility.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, one of the best ways to disappoint someone is to give them, not meet the expectations that they have. And so a big part of having a journey go well is just setting expectation up front. Here are the 5 steps that we're going to go through. Here's how long it's going to take. Here's what we'll need where and when. And here's who you can talk to on this stage, right?
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Managing expectations and communication is so important.
It's really, and visibility, just simply, where am I, right?
Yeah.
Who, who's got this now, and what do they need so that I can make sure it's moving forward? Because at the end of the day, the customer is just trying to accomplish something, and the journey through your enterprise is just a means to an end. Think about that small business owner. I'm just trying to open a business and start selling pizzas. I really don't want to be an expert in underwriting, right? I just want to know, right? I just want to know when it is that that process is done. What do you need from me to make it go as quickly as possible, right?
Right, right. Indeed, indeed. Because at the end of the day, they also have their customers that they're trying to get to serve, but they can't do that if you don't do your part.
That's exactly right. And so, one of the interesting things you sort of brought up credit cards. One of the most important things that a financial institution can do for a small business owner is give them a way to accept payment, right? I mean, that sort of what they call accounts receivable, right? Which is
Mm-hmm.
essentially, managing your revenue from your own customers and making that something that's easy to do, that works every time, that gets that money from your customers into your bank account on a regular basis. So you can make payroll, you can buy supplies, all of that. I mean, the role that banks play in helping small businesses survive and thrive really it's critical in those kinds of activities, right? So, managing if something goes, bump in the night, or there's a hiccup in that process, being on top of it and giving the customer an expectation when it's going to get solved is super important, particularly for businesses that, basically need that cash flow to operate.
Yeah, indeed. All right. Now, Tim, could you share with us what's the one online resource, tool, website, or app that you absolutely can't live without in your business?
Hmm. I mean, what's super, super, super critical for us. Um, we use our platform, and then a combination of that and an online tool set called Miro, which is almost like a group whiteboard capability.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we use that with our bank clients in, the way that you do these things today, because everybody's all over the place, is, you get on an hour or two Zoom call, and we actually facilitate discussions with our clients on what exactly is it like from a customer's point of view to try to accomplish something inside of your bank, right? What is it like from a customer standpoint, and particularly not just your bank, but also increasingly, and I know you've seen this, financial institutions are partnering with other companies and external providers and financial technology providers to deliver solutions to businesses. So increasingly, it's not just, how are you doing things internally, but also what is it like for the customer to get bounced between you and some other company they've never heard of that you happen to be sourcing a solution from. So,
Mm,
that capability and the ability to map all of that out in real time with our clients, and then so that they can see what that looks like today and then start working to make it better,
mm-hmm.
has become a really critical component of sort of how we help those banks improve their business.
Great. And Miro is Miro. Is that how you spell it?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
All right. So we'll have the link for that application in the show notes of this episode. Now, Tim, could you also share with us maybe one or two books that have had the biggest impact on you? It could be a book that you read recently, or even one that you read a very long time ago, but it still has left an indelible mark on your life.
Oh, absolutely. And that's an easy one to tell you. When I first, in the interest of full disclosure, and again, back to, I didn't consciously set out on this path to be in financial services. I I was originally studying to be a literature professor.
Wow.
Um,
So you
Yeah,
like
and
you like to read.
I do well, yeah, I decided I liked it so much I didn't want to have to do it for a living. So um I after I finished my master's degree, as I was thinking about maybe do I not want to go get a doctorate and become a professor, I on a lark moved out to the Bay Area in San Francisco and just backed into a job at a management consulting firm. And the founding partner of that firm encouraged me to read a book by a couple of his McKinsey colleagues called In Search of Excellence. And because I had almost no business education whatsoever, I eagerly dove into it. And the interesting thing about that book, Unique, is that it's a fairly straightforward analysis of how have companies across a number of different industries been successful.
Hmm.
And almost all of the stories come back to a fairly simple premise that you build your business from the marketplace back. You start with the customer, right? You start with a customer group or a portfolio or a type of customer you want to serve, and then you design everything else about your business around being really great at meeting that need for that customer, right? Um, you think about sort of what the typical airline experience was before Southwest came on the scene, right? Or what the typical shopping experience looked like before somebody like an Amazon came on the scene, right? Where it's like, I'm going to rethink how it is that, what it is a customer's trying to accomplish, what it is what needs they're trying to fill, and then focus really intently on doing that very well and strip away everything else that doesn't absolutely serve that need. And so that was a real revelation for me, sort of as a newbie in the business world. And that's continued to be a touchstone for every career stop I've had, and particularly in the role that I have now, which is basically helping a host of different enterprise companies of various stripes, mainly in financial services now, but also in a number of other industries, you know, get to that realization, focus intently on what is the experience of the customer in trying to accomplish something in their lives, and how do I design what I am doing around meeting that really, really well.
Hmm.
Um, so it's kind of come full circle for me from that sort of that first introduction to, how good businesses operate.
Great. All right. So we will definitely look that book up and share the link for it in the show notes of this episode for all of our listeners that would love to tap into that awesome resource. Now, Tim, could you
Mhm.
also share with us what's one thing that's going on in your life right now that you're really excited about? Either something you're working on to develop yourself or your people.
What's really exciting for for me, sort of as I've gone through my career, I've sort of made a study of how businesses create ecosystems, sort of how networks of organizations come together around a common delivery to a customer or to a segment or to create a product or solution. And you think about sort of the companies I've worked in, Visa, Blackhawk, sort of which are network business models where you've got sort of you build a platform and you have, you know, companies, you know, come to that platform and do business with each other through the capability you're delivering.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we're finding in the business today of OvationCXM, which is our sort of customer experience management software platform, that we're starting to see the same kind of ecosystem dynamics that we have in sort of major enterprise banks and insurance companies and healthcare organizations partnered with a host of sort of providers of services and solutions, whether that's financial technology, health tech, what have you. And our customer experience management platform is becoming a way for them to collaborate and interact as an ecosystem in delivering great experiences to their customers. And it's fascinating to see that sort of network effect begin to take off, even in, something as simple as our customer experience management delivery platform
Mm-hmm.
in this industry. It's fascinating to see network effects start to materialize in this software business, which is just, it's really exciting for me because, I've spent a lot of my days helping to manage and grow network effect businesses, and we're starting to see that in ours today. So it's super exciting, at least for me. I know it's maybe geeky for most folks, but for me, it's fun to watch.
Okay. So it's like you're forming your own community.
Yes, well, exactly. And I mean, that's the funny thing about it is that, in the same way that communities are super important to our lives as individuals,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Definitely.
families, businesses are actually not that different,
No.
that communities of companies that are delivering capabilities or delivering on something tend to be stronger, more resilient, and frankly, more adaptive.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Agreed. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for sharing, Tim. Now, Tim, could you tell our listeners where they can find you online? They would have tapped into this episode, they'd have heard all about Ovation CX and, your journey, a little bit about customer journey and the importance. And so they'd like to connect with you online. They'd like to maybe learn more about your software and your company. Where can they find you online?
That's fairly straightforward. It is Ovation CXM. That's all one word, OVATION CXM.com. And that's our website, and it tells all about the company and how we help to map and then orchestrate great customer journeys for businesses serving businesses. And we would welcome anyone's interest in sort of tapping into that and seeing what we can do to help.
All right. Okay. So we'll have Tim's website available for any of our guests that would like to tap into getting on board with Tim and his team. Now, before we wrap our episodes up, Tim, we always like to ask our guests, do you have a quote or a saying that during times of adversity or challenge, you'll tend to revert to this quote? It kind of helps to keep you on track or get you back on track if for any reason you get derailed. Do you have one of those?
I do, and it's from a longer poem by, and I should remember the whole thing, Yannick, because I studied it, didn't I? But from a, a longer poem by Rudyard Kipling, and the entirety of which I don't remember off the top of my head, but one line in particular, which is about sort of one of the most important things you can do um, in times of duress is, be the person who's keeping his head while everyone else around you is losing theirs. And I think, that has helped in a number of ways, in particular stressful situations. It just to step outside of the challenge that you're currently in and realize that the only way to respond to and solve the challenge is to not let it cloud your mind. And I think that quote has helped immensely in difficult times professionally.
Great. All right. So we'll definitely have that quote in our show notes.
And hopefully you'll find the longer poem
Yeah, we'll
because
we'll
it's sort of
do we'll do the research and put the full poem so our listeners can definitely tap into the whole part of it. Great. All
yeah.
right. Well, thank you so much, Tim, for taking time out of your very busy day and chatting with us on this podcast about customer journey and your business Ovation CXM and the importance of ensuring that your journey has the important components to ensure that your customers are completely satisfied. And regardless of the industry that you're in, even if it's the financial sector, you really need to have a journey that is orchestrated in such a way that your customer has a frictionless and delightful experience, that they'd want to come back and hopefully bring their friends and family with them too. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Yannick. This has been a pleasure.
Great.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Just want to remind our listeners, if you'd like to join our private Facebook group, it's Navigating the Customer Experience Community, and feel free to follow us on Twitter at NavigatingCX. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant. We also have a new book available on Amazon, The ABCs of a Fantastic Customer Experience. It's available in ebook and paperback. So if you want to increase revenue in your organization, build a stronger service culture, and create employees or develop employees who are really mastering service delivery in your business, you need to grab a copy of this book. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.